Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. अगर आप pharmacy student हैं, gearing up for your anatomy and physiology exams, you are in exactly the right place today. Our main goal is to completely master the human digestive system. We're going to take all those complex anatomical structures and physiological processes and break them down into highly focused, exam-friendly concepts. We'll be covering everything you need to know, from the exact moment food enters your mouth, all the way to the clinical biochemistry of liver function tests. So get ready to take some high-yield notes because we're going to make learning this system efficient, accessible, and totally memorable. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with a system overview and the GI tract, then move down through the mouth, teeth, and pharynx. After that, we'll hit the esophagus and stomach, the intestines and absorption, the accessory organs, and finally wrap things up with liver function tests. Section 1. System Overview and GI Tract. The anatomical journey begins. Okay, let's dive right into this. To really understand digestion, you've got to see it as a two-part operation. First up, we have the alimentary canal, which you probably know better as the GI tract. Think of this as one continuous hollow tube running all the way from your mouth straight down to the anus. Food actually travels directly through this path. But on the flip side, we have the accessory digestive organs. These are your teeth, tongue, salivary glands, liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. Now, besides your teeth and tongue, food doesn't ever actually go inside these accessory organs. Instead, they act as the ultimate helpers. They secrete all the necessary chemicals and enzymes right into the GI tract to break your food down. Tracing this complete anatomical journey, ingestion starts right at the top, in the oral cavity. Food then travels down the pharynx, through that long esophagus, and drops right into the stomach. From the stomach, it enters the incredibly tightly coiled small intestine, which is where the real magic of nutrient absorption happens, before moving into the wider large intestine and eventually out through the rectum and anus. And sitting right there in the middle of it all are those accessory organs, like the large reddish liver and the pancreas, just waiting to pump in their digestive juices. All right, before we keep moving down the tract, we need to make a major exam pit stop. Exam point of view say, ye bahut important hai. If you take a cross-section of the GI tract wall, anywhere from the esophagus down to the rectum, you are consistently going to see 4 distinct tissue layers. Starting from the outside in, you've got the serosa. That's your protective outer layer. Next is the muscularis, which handles the contractions pushing the food along. Then comes the submucosa, highly vascularized and packed with blood and lymphatic vessels. And finally, the innermost layer lining the lumen itself is the mucosa. Definitely memorize these 4 layers, guys. They are an absolute staple in anatomy multiple choice questions. Section 2. Mouth, teeth, and pharynx. Ingestion and mechanical breakdown. Digestion actually starts the exact second food enters your mouth. Mechanical breakdown kicks off with your jawbones, the maxilla on top and the mandible on the bottom. Safely embedded right in the alveolar sockets of these bones are your teeth. They are literally our built-in tools for cutting, tearing, and crushing solid food into tiny particles so we can safely swallow it. For your exams, you absolutely have to know the adult dental formula. It's 2, 1, 2, 3. This represents just one half of a jaw, meaning one single quadrant of your mouth. So in every quadrant, you have 2 incisors for cutting, 1 canine for tearing, 2 premolars for crushing, and 3 molars for grinding. Add those up, and that's 8 teeth per quadrant. Multiply by 4, and boom, you get the complete set of 32 adult teeth. Make sure you can match up each specific tooth type to its mechanical job. And while we're on the topic of teeth, let's punch in a really quick high-yield fact. The outer bulk of the tooth is made of a substance called enamel. Enamel is officially the hardest substance in the entire human body. No joke. Keep this one in your back pocket because it's a super common trivia and MCQ question for pharmacy students. So once your teeth have done their thing and saliva from your 3 major salivary glands, the parotid, submandibular, and sublingual, has mixed all in, the food turns into this soft little mass we call a bolus. Next up is swallowing, clinically known as deglutition. This happens in 3 sequential stages. First is the voluntary stage, where you consciously push the bolus to the back of your throat or oropharynx. Then comes the pharyngeal stage. This one is completely involuntary. The bolus heads into the esophagus and, this is absolutely crucial, a cartilaginous flap called the epiglottis blocks your trachea so you don't accidentally inhale your food. Finally, the esophageal stage involuntarily forces that bolus all the way down into your stomach. Section 3. Esophagus and stomach, transport and chemical digestion. Moving our narrative down that 25-centimeter long food pipe, you might be wondering, how exactly does food travel down there? I mean, sure, gravity helps, but the real hero is peristalsis. Make sure you know this definition clearly. Peristalsis is essentially a series of wave-like, coordinated muscular contractions and relaxations in the GI tract wall that literally push the food bolus forward. It's a continuous, fundamental physiological movement that keeps things flowing through the whole system. And now we land in the stomach. Understanding this organ is critical. The stomach is this J-shaped pouch in your upper left abdomen holding about 1.5 liters. Anatomically, it's divided into 4 parts: the cardia, fundus, body, and pylorus. But functionally, it is a total chemical powerhouse. It secretes hydrochloric acid, or HCl, creating a highly acidic environment just to kill off ingested bacteria. It also secretes pepsinogen, which that acid turns into pepsin, your main enzyme for digesting proteins. Throw in some intrinsic factor and gastric lipase, and once the stomach churns all this into a liquid soup called chyme, it pushes it right through the pyloric sphincter. Section 4. Intestines and absorption, maximizing nutrient uptake. Next up is the small intestine. This thing is a massive 6 meters long, making it the longest part of your entire digestive tract. It's got 3 distinct sections you need to differentiate. The duodenum is the short first part that receives bile and pancreatic juices. Then the jejunum, which is your main site for absorbing nutrients. Finally, the ileum. This is the longest part, and its major claim to fame is absorbing vitamin B12 and recycling bile salts. And to maximize all this absorption, the inner walls are absolutely lined with villi, these tiny finger-like projections that massively increase the available surface area. Whatever doesn't get absorbed in the small intestine passes right into the large intestine, which spans about 1.5 meters and includes the cecum, colon, rectum, and anal canal. But the primary physiological goal here completely changes. Instead of soaking up macronutrients, the large intestine focuses on absorbing leftover water and electrolytes. It's also home to incredibly important gut bacteria that actually produce things like vitamin K. And finally, it consolidates all that remaining waste into feces for elimination. Section 5. Accessory organs, liver and pancreas, the chemical powerhouses. Now, digestion in the small intestine heavily relies on helpers pouring fluids in from the outside. The liver is unbelievably multifunctional. Weighing in at about 1.5 kilograms, it is the largest gland in the body. Think of it as a massive metabolic factory. It produces bile, which gets stored in the gallbladder to help digest fats. It synthesizes plasma proteins and stores glycogen. Plus, it serves a massive protective function, filtering your blood, detoxifying poisons, and metabolizing the very drugs you're studying right now as pharmacy students. Here is your ultimate exam cheat sheet for digestive enzymes. Seriously, take a mental screenshot of this. Notice how salivary amylase starts starch digestion way up in the mouth. Pepsin tackles proteins in the stomach. But look at the pancreas. It is a true heavy hitter. While its endocrine side handles hormones like insulin and glucagon, its exocrine side is busy pumping out trypsin for proteins and lipase for fats right into the small intestine. And lastly, the small intestine itself secretes enzymes like maltase and lactase to finish breaking down carbohydrates. Definitely keep this breakdown handy when you're revising. Section 6. Liver function tests, clinical correlations for pharmacy. Now, understanding the anatomy is great, but as future healthcare professionals, we have to connect this anatomy back to real-world clinical diagnostics. We measure the health of this vital system using liver function tests, or LFTs. These are blood tests that track specific enzymes and proteins. When liver cells get damaged, they actually leak enzymes into the bloodstream. So for example, ALT and AST normally live inside healthy liver cells. If a patient's lab results show elevated ALT or AST above these normal ranges, it's a huge red flag for liver damage. Similarly, high bilirubin, a waste product, can mean the liver is failing to process and excrete it properly, which leads to that yellowing of the skin we call jaundice. We have covered a massive amount of information today, so before we wrap up, I want to give you a really catchy memory trick to make sure you never forget the strict anatomical sequence of the GI tract. Just remember this sentence. My pretty elephant stole small, large, red apples. The first letters stand for mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, and anus. Write that one down in your notes. And that brings us to the very end of our digestive system deep dive. But before you go, I've got a final exam check for you based on everything we just covered. Let's see who is paying close attention. Which specific part of the small intestine is responsible for absorbing vitamin B12 and bile salts? Drop your answers down in the comments below to really solidify your learning. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Study hard, and I will see you in the next one.